Then I would love to show you the program a little. I just open a file. Just a second. There we are. Okay. So, as you saw before, you saw the interface. Nothing was there. There was just a line with some buttons, and there was a borderline. You see, there was nothing more. Now, we open the file, and now you see the respective waveforms. This is now the original recording as you get it from the amplifier. What we have up here, we have some buttons. F plus, F minus is to toggle between different files you opened. So if you have two files open, you can toggle just between the files. Then the other buttons I come later on. Then we have the DSA button. I can show you what then happens. There is this, we calculate the DSA, and you can see then the analysis, the result. If you're looking for seizures in an epileptic patient, then it's pretty easy because you will see a tremendous change here, and you can navigate to the seizure, as long as the seizure is not subclinical. If it is subclinical, you will see nothing here. Then we have to look another way to the whole problem. You can certainly navigate to the respective point by clicking in. So you now see, okay, that's the window from the left to the right dotted bar. That's the window you see at the moment. And certainly can see you can increase the scale down, scale up, and so on. There are a lot of other buttons. I will not explain right now because I perfectly want to recommend to work through the big tutorial we have on our webpage, because then everything will be explained. If I go to every button and every functionality, then we will need this 3 days I was talking before. Okay. Then we have an ICA here, so we can calculate an ICA. We come to that later as well, because we want to do that, and I want to show you artifact correction together with ICA. Then what we have here, we have the recorded montages. You can see that's the original recording, the original average reference, so that's coming from the amplifier. You have certainly the possibility to have the double banana, triple banana. That depends on how you are used to look onto your data. We have virtual montages. These are montages which are not, which you set up, virtual. So we calculate these montages, different kinds of. You can certainly edit all of the montages as well. And you have the source montages. Source montages, you can easily just go back to the beginning. So. If you look here, that's the map of a typical eye blink. The map window gone. Sometimes this happens with lower resolutions, that the map window is disappearing. Ah, here it is. I found it. Okay. So sometimes the map window is disappearing at low resolutions. So that's a typical blink map. You see there's a strong signal in front, and that's a typical blink signal. So this is an eye blink up there. And if you look now at the brain region montage, at the source montage, and look at the brain regions, let's take a frontal region, and you see that the blink is perfectly in the frontal region. See here, here, a little part here, and as well here. So, but not if you go to the go to the parietal region, you will see nothing of the blink. So see very easily that these montages, they take the signal which is coming, which is on the scalp, transform it into the brain, look on the different, we have a lot of, we have placed some dipoles and regional sources in the brain. They try to explain the signal and say there's the center of gravity. So I show you. Source montages like this one look like that. So you see there's nothing on the scalp. But what I have here is I have montages, I have regional sources here, some dipoles here. And that's pretty interesting. And some regional sources here as well. And they pick up all of the signal and we try to explain and transform it back on the scalp. So then you have the signal from the waveforms from these brain regions. In this montage editor, if I go to the recorded montage and go to the montage editor, you can see here the recorded montage. And suddenly you can go here, you see that the electrode is displayed on the other side with a yellow dot. And you can then here change the montage. You can have your own montages. You can have virtual montages. You can create your own source montages. And all of these montages you are doing will be under the user montages here. We have some optimized montages like the AV33, which is basically made for epilepsy review. And we have the AV25, which is also made for epilepsy review, but with MEG data. So MEG data is a little different than the EEG data, because you only have we have a radial blindness of the MEG, so the data looks different. Okay. Then we have the filter buttons, the low filters. There are some filters predefined here. You can certainly set your own filters. We have the high filters, the notch filters, and the most important, the edit filter dialog. Then you can define your low cutoff filters, your high cutoff notch filter, bandpass filter, whatever you like. And you see what you can do. You can define a low cutoff filter. First thing is the hertz. Then what kind of filter? Zero phase, forward, backward filtering. Depends on what you want. It depends on the type of data you have and on the type of experiment you have. And then the steepness, the slope of the filter. So how fast is the filter response? That's very important, and I will show you afterwards that a lot of people think about filtering that it's not doing much to the data. In fact, it's distorting your data. As soon as you start filtering, you distort data. I will show you afterwards. Okay. Then here's an EEG button. If there's an MEG recording available as well in this case, then you can toggle this button and then you will see the MEGs down here. So the different channels of the MEG, the gradiometers, the magnetometers. Here you can see the EEG at the moment because it's only available. Sometimes if you have polygraphic channels, you can also toggle to the polygraphic channels. Then they are here. We have a polygraphic channel. This is the EUG channel, that's the eye movement channel. Then we have the scalp channels, or all. Then the EUG channel is here. And you can have additional channels. They're all switched off at the moment because they're not really defined at the moment. So I don't know, maybe they're defined already because we will define them in a few minutes. Then what you have here, you have for the navigation. In this case, 31 electrodes, it's pretty easy to see. That's not a problem. You can easily go through the data, you can see everything, but imagine a data set of 512 electrodes. These kind of systems are available. Nihon Kohden from Japan is already producing such an amplifier with 512 electrodes. Then the screen is basically black. Then what you have to do is you can adjust the number of channels you want to display, and then you can go down by the channel groups, or you can say, I just want to see the first half and the second half, or the first quarter, fourth quarter, and so on. So this helps you if you have a huge amount of channels. This helps you to look at the data. But if I can do a personal recommendation, remontage everything. Then if you have 512 channels, remontage it to something like 60 channels and so on. You get a much better overview, and it's not a problem. You can do that. Okay, then here you can adjust the amplitude by just clicking it up, or you have some preset values here. If you don't like the value, you can certainly go in other steps. Nothing. Okay. Back to 50. That's good. The polygraphic channel we have just one, so it makes no sense to group them in some points. But if it comes to MEG recording, you sometimes have a lot more, because if I look at the Neuromax systems, the Neuromax systems have something like 25 of these channels, and they carry very, very big signals. And it makes sense to group them and then to see which of the signals are good and switch them off if you don't like them and so on. So that makes sense. In this case, not. But you certainly can scale this channel separately from the other channels. Okay, now we can see the channel over up here, so it's scaled in a different scale. Then we have a very interesting, very important thing here. Normally, everybody is looking at EEG data on a 10-second window, but depends on your research. If you're interested in ultra-slow activity, this is not a window you want to look at, so you certainly can adjust it. You just see 60 seconds here, but in fact it's going up to 20 minutes. And if I do this, yeah, you will see that's the whole recording now. The recording is altogether 16 minutes, so there's something left, some space left here. And the whole window would then consist of 20 minutes. So as I said, for the people who look at ultra-slow activity, they would perfectly love to have a 1 hour window, because sometimes the activity is going up and down in a time of 20 seconds, and you don't really see it in this case. So, yeah, that's no problem. I go back to the standard review for EEG. It's 10. Okay, then what we have down here is the bar where you can see the different triggers. Trigger 3, trigger 5, 4, 2. There are other triggers, 1 and 3 as well. And these triggers come from the experiment, how you define them. So here you can see over the file, this represents the 16 minutes of complete file. You can see where the triggers are. So now, in fact, you see there are a lot of triggers. And it's difficult to navigate these triggers here. So by just paging through, it's easier. Okay, this brings it exactly here. This button means a complete page back, complete page forward, half page back, half page forward. You certainly can go by pressing spacebar, and certainly by backspace going back, which is just the normal way of reviewing data. Okay, then we have another thing here. If you have a channel, you can select it, and if you see the channel is very noisy and something happens to the electrode, maybe the electrode is out of order, you can define this channel as bad. What happens? The channel is now flatlining, so nothing is in the channel, and this channel will be ignored for all further analysis. So we don't use the data. Or what you can do, you can interpolate the channel if you like. then it appears in purple. Then you see this is an interpolated channel. Interpolation means you take the signal from the surrounding electrodes and explain the signal of this electrode with the information from the other electrodes. You interpolate. But there's a downside on the whole thing. So if you want to interpolate electrode at the rim of your electrode set, then you will get a problem because there are just 2 or 3 electrodes on the one side surrounding, but not on the downside. And then it will be distorted, and maybe the explanation is wrong. So what we recommend, electrodes on the rim, if they have a bad signal, please do not interpolate, reject them, set them as bad. Okay. In fact, we don't have bad channels here, so I just keep this one. So do you have questions so far? Good. Okay, then let's go and show you some more. I just want to show you something about BESA, which is a very important thing. As soon as you work with BESA, you generate a lot of different files. You may generate channel configurations, digitized head surface points. Well, they are coming from the recording. You may generate co-registration files. Maybe there's data about the MEG sensors available or artifact coefficients. So if these files are available, BESA will look for them automatically and load them automatically as long as they have the same name like my file. And the same, not exactly the same name, but if the name is associated with that one. So that's a very important feature about BESA. In this case, everything is good because we don't need it, because it's not available at the moment. But if there's something available and it's not okay, then it will be mentioned bad here, and you will see not a tick mark, you will see a red cross, that something is not good. So this is very important sometimes, that you have to load associated data as soon as you have, if it comes to the MEG, for example, you have the position of your, you want to see the positions of the MEG sensors. Some of the data files are not having the information of the MEG sensors stored within, so you have to associate them. And unfortunately, they are not always having the same name, so it's not always done automatically. Okay, I will come later back to that. Okay, so now what we have, I told you something about artifact correction, and first of all, I want to show you artifact correction with the ICA. So we want to correct that blink now. That's very easy. We go to ICA and we want to run the ICA on the current screen. Well, it makes sense to run it on the current screen. There is a hyperlink, so we can see we have our artifact here, and we don't have to go through the whole recording. This takes a little time. You see? That's now for the one screen. It takes some time. Okay. You see the ICA component number 2 looks like this signal from the hyperlink. And you see the ICA component number 5 carries heart rate. But it's not a big signal in the moment, and we had no artifacts of the ECG in the recording, so we just leave this out at the moment. We just think about this one. Well, let's map it. Yeah, definitely. That's the hyperlink. It's no problem to see that. Then we can go here, select this channel, and define as artifact topography. Here we go. And we go to the blink. And this was just a warning message, but it's okay. And say, okay. If I now go back to the EEG, if I now go back to my EEG, I can toggle by pressing the Control E button. I can toggle between corrected and uncorrected data. So I just go to the recorded. You see now uncorrected. I press Control E and everything is gone. Or I can certainly go Control E. You see here how the data looks like. And you see that everything is now calming down a little. So what you see, basically, all of the data is influenced. It's not only this channel, it's not only getting out the eye blink, everything is influenced. So that's always, you have always to take care about that. If you do something like artifact rejection, it might happen that your whole data is looking a little different afterwards. Okay, just push this out. But there's also another possibility. I can also press the artifact button here and switch on the correction here and switch on the off the correction here. But I have also available automatic correction in BESA, so you don't have to do the ICA if you don't like. Because for the eye blink, we have here already something. So now, that's not the automatic correction, it's not the ICA correction at the moment. And now you can see it's the automatic correction of BESA. There's a new channel introduced here, the VEOG channel. You see in this channel where the artifact was, and if you go now through the recording, you will easily see where the artifacts have been. All the time you see it down there, there was a correction. Okay. And there's certainly another way to do artifact correction is by just excluding the artifact. That's not correction, that's rejection in fact. I just drag a block here and I define this artifact, and then this block, all of the data from that block will be cut out of the data and you will not use it for analysis anymore. So it's rejected, not corrected. That's the difference. Okay. Some questions about artifact correction. So this is just eye blinks. This is a very simple artifact. ECG is another artifact, but you certainly can go and make some more interesting, I would say. We can define our own artifact topography with the pattern search. This is a very unique feature of BESA, and I would say that this is one of the strong. What I have here, I have simulated data here. It's simulated, it's not real data, so there's no noise on it, and that's clean. There's a clean solution to be expected, which you will not have in real data, to be honest. Okay, we left drag a block and say source analysis. We don't need a filter in this case because there's nothing in it. Take the whole segment and send it to source analysis. Okay, what we now see here is the source analysis window. You have here a data button. This is basically data, or the residue button. I released that one. Oh, sorry. First of all, I have to pick something. Now you can see the residue. That's what this dipole is not explaining. So that's the remains of the signal. The less of the red you have, the better your solution. For sure, in a realistic case, you will always have a considerable amount of residue. In this case, I can show you that we can fit two dipoles, and we can say all fit, start fit, and we have as good as nothing of an unexplained signal. So everything is explained. So as I said, that's simulated data. That is very easy. That is also very easy because these two signals, okay, so I just have to invert them. Okay, these two signals are they're not overlapping. They are separated from each other. That makes it pretty simple to draw them apart from each other. Looks a little different if I take another example. I just closed the window. If I take another example where there is an overlap. Okay, we take the biphasic synchronous. Say source analysis again. Take the whole segment and send it to source analysis. So now there is an overlap. It's synchronous. So you see, it looks different now. Again. The two dipoles. Say all start fit in this case. And still, I get a really good solution because now they're synchronous, which means they are touching each other, but it's not a real overlap. You can still have a very good solution. Okay. Give you another example. And then you will see that it's getting more difficult, in fact. So now we have noise in it. So now we will have a considerable signal, which is in the end, which is unexplained. So now you can see the signal here is not a clean signal. You had a flat line at the beginning, then there was a signal, a flat line at the end. Now we have noise with the whole thing. What we now can do, we can again have a fit, and now you see you have a considerable amount of residue left. You see residue variance, 4.82%. Still a very good number, in fact, but for sure it is now a considerable number of noise left here. So what I wanted to show with that, it's very easy. You saw a very easy problem in the beginning, no overlap, no noise. Very good residue variance. You have a little overlap, synchronous problem, you have a little more residue variance, and now we have the noise within. And now this gives you an impression on how it will look like in real data, where muscle artifacts come in and everything you can imagine. So there is also no guideline where you can say you cannot say you have to reach a certain amount of residual variance. You cannot say this because it depends on the quality of your data, it depends on your experiment, what to expect. So sometimes I'm asked, yes, I have to reach something like 90%, I think. I can say, well, that's impossible. That really depends on what you're looking at. Sometimes it's very good to have 50% left. But on the other hand, if it comes to seizure analysis, for example, you look at a seizure. During a seizure, epileptiform seizure, you have a lot of muscle activity, and that's difficult to get rid of that one. So you will have a lot of remaining unexplained signal. Okay, it was just a very, very short thing about source localization. First thing about that. We have dipoles here. Dipoles are pretty nice to take. So they are one of the most precise models of explaining a signal, but they have a big downside. And the big downside of a dipole is that you have to have a lot of knowledge of what you're doing. and you have to have a lot of knowledge about your experiment, about the anatomy of the brain, and that's about dipole fitting. That's something you have to learn by doing. And the first time you will not succeed in having a good result, and you will get better with that. But in fact, dipole fitting, you have to have a lot of knowledge until you can do it right. There's another example, which is the distributed sources like the Loretta and so on. If I take the very same example, send it to source analysis, and I perform a Loretta, looks like this. That's not very nice. So what in fact happens, everything smears out over the brain. You see that's not a very nice view, not a very nice thing, because all the brain is at the moment is glowing, so that's not a good thing. I have to adjust the fit interval on here. Let's do it this way. Recalculate the Loretta. It's getting a little more focal, but still, you can see we cannot differentiate between the two sides of the brain. It's impossible. If I take another image, let's take as a slow full image. We see this is an iterative method as well. Oh, getting better. It's not smeared out. We can also take a Clara. Sorry, take the Clara. And now we got what we wanted. We separated the two sources. There's a left source and a right source. And that's the nice thing about these methods, where you use the initial solution from the first step you use as the input for the second step. Then you gain precision. You saw before, the whole brain was glowing. It was not possible to differentiate between left and right. And now you see, most probably there are two sources. And yes, in fact, the experiment has exactly two sources, and they're modeled exactly there. So that's a very good example of why you should always think about different methods of using. There is a big danger about distributed sources. The big danger is people sometimes think that one method is suitable for everything. That's not right. Someone was sitting down and developing a method because he had a very special research interest, a special topic he was looking at, and designed a method around that. And yes, you can use this method very good for similar examples. But if you do another experiment, this method may be completely failed. And then it's a little misleading. And Loretta is a very, very strong candidate for taking it as some kind of wonder weapon for everything, but that's wrong. Loretta sometimes completely fails, and you have to be careful about it. So the take-home message should be: try the different methods. Try from the knowledge of your experiment, from the anatomical knowledge you have, and from the knowledge of the signal you are expecting. Try to judge whether this is the correct result or not. So and then go through the whole thing. Yes,
can you explain different methods, the strengths and the weaknesses?
That's difficult. You cannot say really
exactly.
That's impossible. Okay. In fact, that really depends on your experiment. Is it strong or not? So look at the auditory experiment. It's for you need a separation of the two sides. It's a bilateral activity. Here we can do that. That's a strength of that method. It's a weakness of the Loretta method. But you can take the Loretta method sometimes very nicely in epilepsy diagnosis. If it comes to focal temporal epilepsy or something like this.
So
this method is also pretty good. But some other methods will be completely failing during that time. So it's difficult to say, Loretta, take it for whatever. It's difficult. And I can recommend to go through literature and look what the people did, and look what if the results look promising or not, and look which method they used. Try to apply the same conditions to your experiment, and then see whether this method is working for you as well. But that's really difficult to say, almost impossible to say, because I changed some modalities within an experiment, and even the Loretta, which is made for that kind of experiment, may fail. So that's the difficult thing. It's impossible to say. Okay, this is just giving you a short impression. Now what you see here is, you see a standard brain here. That's another individual anatomy. You can certainly choose between different kind of head models here. We have a realistic approximation for different ages here. We have other 4-shell model, 3-shell model, or homogeneous sphere, which is basically a sphere with one conductivity value, or the 4-shell ellipsoid. We really like this one. It's a good head model, but the best would be to have the individual anatomy. So if you have the MRI available and you say BESA, there is the individual anatomy available, we do the localization directly in the individual anatomy. That's for the co-registration with our data set. So why co-registration is interesting? Just imagine an apple on the one hand and an apricot on the other hand. If you just look at the shape, they look not too different, in fact, but the size may really differ. So now I localize something in my apple, but because that's my standard brain, but I have a smaller brain because it's a child or something like this, because it's the apricot, I do a mistake. A big mistake. I cannot transform this one by one into the other. That's impossible. So then, if you have to make a decision, especially if it comes to epilepsy surgery or something like this, it would be absolutely fatal not using the individual anatomy. So, and also certainly EEG can only be one of the different methods you should use to evaluate the epilepsy of the patient. Okay. So far about that. As I said, just brief. I recommend to do the big tutorial of us. I was just talking to Paul, and we said we want to distribute this to you. We don't have it in a printed form because it's, I can show you. It's like this. It's 400 pages of quite a lot of information. Would be a little difficult to carry that from Germany to here. So, okay. Would have to pay a lot of over luggage. But anyway, so we have this as a PDF version, and we will distribute it to you. It's on the other hand, you can download that one from our FTP server, because I think the file is something like 60 megabytes, and that's a little difficult to send out via email. So I will give you the link for our FTP server, and then we'll go. Okay.